Hello, folks. How are you doing? All welcome. Sorry for the later start today. Kevin Allen's going to be joining us. He was just with us and had to log off for a second to try to see if he can get a better internet connection. You know, the internet, that wonderful thing that makes all this possible.
The internet, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Who has something to say today to start with?
I do.
Something to say.
We're starting to hear about other sports starting up, except for baseball, but forget about baseball. But we're starting to hear about other sports. So the NBA, as an example, are putting out their schedule or already put it out. What's interesting about it is they guaranteed 14 of the teams, because obviously they're going to be eliminated first, will only be there for a maximum of 53 days. Now, it's nice and efficient to say that as a league and say, hey, we're telling you guys you'll only be there 53 days. You'll have the rest of the summer. But I'm telling you, there is something now that's bugging a lot of people, and this is in all sports, where they're looking at athletes and saying, well, this is your job. And we get it's cutting into your summer. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that show up to work every day at their jobs that they hate. And they still do it because they have to do it because they do it for a living. And if this is cutting into your summer, or you're not in a place that's exciting enough for you because it's not what you normally do, you've got to choose between whether you actually really want to play the sport or go through a little hardship too, because everybody is. And
really hard argument to make, like right now, and
I think when I think when the NBA put that out there, I think it's clear that the players were complaining that they don't want to be away more than a certain amount of time. So they basically, that's something that was a talking point on ESPN today. So
then throw your series and lose in the first round, and you can go home.
Right.
Yeah, I also think there's still some concern over the pandemic too, though.
No, there is. But that wouldn't concern you that you're going to be there for 53 days. What's the difference if you're there for, 53 days or 73 days in that regard? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's fair. But I mean, are you talking about the conference call that they had on that the NBA players between 50 and 60 players?
I guess that's probably what it came out of that I didn't.
Yeah, but some of that was just simply on the fact that there are players who aren't just don't feel comfortable coming back to play.
Okay, and I get that. I mean, I do. That's a real reality. But also, again, I think even a little bit with the NHL, we're sort of getting the idea, and nobody's talking about it a lot, that, hey, let's make these hub cities a little bit exciting. And we'll talk about the hub cities, because if it's in a boring hub city, then we're going to be bored too.
Yeah, well, I think with the NHL players, there was sort of a bit of a tug of war, just that Gary Bettman would like to get this started sooner rather than later to sort of give NBC something to showcase that they don't have the Olympics. And I think the players wanted it later because, it felt more like the way they normally play. If you're playing in August, well, that's the time where you're gathering with your teammates to skate. So it felt more like in the middle of July. And then there's the idea of what you just brought up. Some of them said, we kind of wanted our summer, like we count on it, So, but I when it's all said and done, everybody will show up and play. Doesn't matter when it is.
Yeah,
we should get going here into the show because I got something to talk about.
Okay, let's roll.
All right, so let's see. The date is the 12th.
12th of June. Yes.
That's right. You sure? Apologize. There we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Friday, June 12th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. I'm not sure what's happening here, but okay. Oh, no.
Kevin froze.
Kevin's frozen a little bit. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey universe. And Kevin's back now. We got him back. But that's Kevin Allen from Points Unknown, UFA. We call him.
Anyway, like the Mass Destroyer.
Kevin Allen, who needs a new computer, I think.
Yeah, or just a better internet. Anyway, with interesting news coming out within the last hour here. With 11:24 a.m., the Boston Bruins had a statement here on the COVID-19 testing. And this is what they released. Phase 2 of the NHL's return to play plan requires all players to be tested for COVID-19 prior to using the testing facilities. As part of this process, the Bruins were advised that one of their players tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. The player then underwent 2 subsequent tests and both returned negative. The player remains asymptomatic. The Bruins will continue to follow CDC recommendations and adhere to the NHL protocol. All Bruins players who've returned to this point during Phase 2 have now returned negative test results. The Bruins, in conjunction with the National Hockey League, are providing these details in an effort to be transparent and will provide no further information at this time. This is a very confusing press release. I'm going to throw that out there first.
It is.
Wow.
Why, Kevin? Do you think this is clear?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Positive, and then he probably had a false positive.
Okay, so that's what we're saying here. So somebody had a false positive.
Well, they should have said false positive. I think the fact that they said he had two negative tests.
But you can't say that because you don't really know.
Right, he tested positive, then tested negative. I mean, it is interesting that there's, I think it's good that they released this, I guess. So you think so? Do we like this?
Yeah. No, I think it's great that we're going to have that kind of information. I don't think they're going to tell us who it is, although once they start playing, I think we're going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I that would be my read on that is that they tested everyone and somebody was positive, but it was either a false positive or he was at the tail end of he had it, but he was asymptomatic.
Right. Here's the issue with this, right? Because obviously these tests are not 100% at all.
Right.
They're not 100%, and also, it's like you don't know really right now what how, like, I know the WHO came out earlier in the week, and the report was refuted, but that people who are asymptomatic are less likely to spread COVID-19 to other people. We don't know that's true or not, but that's out there, and we don't know whether people who have antibodies are not susceptible to getting it again. So right now, there's no real hard and fast data with this situation, and it really, I mean, that's why, like, I understand all the precautions that have to be taken, and they have to do it, and the players want that because to protect their families, to protect themselves. But I don't know whether all of this is going to really prevent somebody from getting infected down the line. They're going to take every precaution, and they should, but I don't know if it's going to be worth all the trouble.
Why? I think like if somebody tests positive 2 days in a row,
sure,
you're going to know that's he definitely has it. Or once you test positive, they always test you again.
Right. And they tested the guy twice more.
Yeah,
I was impressed at least.
I think it'll be pretty clear if someone has the virus.
Right. And I think it is. I mean, there is a certain, we don't know that, if a person's asymptomatic can't spread it, but I think it is definitely safe to say they can't spread it as easily. I mean, obviously, if you're like coughing all over people, you're going to spread it more easily.
First we heard it couldn't happen. Then we heard 40%. So clearly nobody knows for sure. I was impressed that I saw the press release. I was, because at least that let me know as a reporter and as a fan, hey, you can't just walk into practice and not get tested, and that's good.
We don't have any indication from this how many players have reported, because what it's saying on this is that, right? It's just saying the players so far in Phase 2 requires that all players be tested.
Well, right now, I believe there were two players from the Ottawa Senators. I think there were 4 from Colorado, but that was back in March.
Now, but what I'm saying here, Mike, is how many players have reported to the Bruins. It's saying that
they're not going to tell you, because
they're not going to tell you that. But I mean, but so far, like in the Phase 2 section of it, it's been one player who from Pittsburgh who was already past it and had the antibodies, and now one from Boston. Now I'm assuming that means that everybody who's on site with these teams has been tested for COVID. But that doesn't mean like the Montreal Canadiens, they have 3 players in Montreal. That means 25 to 30 players who are coming into Montreal haven't been tested yet. So we don't know how many are going to have COVID-19 of that group. Right.
No, that's true. But
it's unofficial, so they won't say how many are going to be there. That's
right. They can't legally.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know yet if the Bruins have had 5 people report to camp or if they've had 20 people report to camp. So we don't know. We just know one of those people, whoever number that is, has tested positive and now tested negative twice.
I mean, do you technically report to camp when there is no camp yet? I mean, what you're saying is how many people are working out? Is that the?
Yeah,
how many people are working out?
For example, I believe because the Leafs have 20 players in Toronto. What they're doing is, I know that they arranged a group of 6 players. I think the max was 6. They had 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and the backup goalie Jack Campbell as one group on Thursday, and I think that's what they're doing. They're probably putting lines and defensive pairings together, but the coaches can't coach them. But at least that gives them the ability to work as a unit and ramp up towards July 10th, which is now the opening day of camp.
I mean,
I talked to 2 teams earlier, and both of them, one had 14 and one had 15.
Okay.
So,
Is it safe to assume though that at these buildings that some people who work there are there too, and they must be getting tested, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
there's ambulance drivers. There's all kinds of things that are definitely going on there, right? You have people working on the ice and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not up in Toronto, so I don't know for a fact, but the Ford Performance Center, which is their practice facility, is also a public facility that is used for, I've seen all 5 pads and people on them all the time that I've been up there. I don't know whether the other 4 pads are closed right now so that the Leafs are only playing on one sheet of ice, or, because only six players can be in the facility at the same time, according to the restrictions right now.
Or on one ice pad. They probably could be in the facility.
Okay.
They could probably have 6 on each ice pad. That's my guess.
Okay, if that's the case, then but I'm saying there is some exposure there if the other pads are being used by just people who've rented the ice. I
don't think they're going to allow that.
Yeah,
I think right now these ice rinks are only open to this kind of stuff, is what I've been told. Yeah, the NHL basically is renting out the entire rink.
No.
That's what. Now there are some interesting things going on about host cities. I want to just bring that up today.
Yeah.
I wrote yesterday about the Vegas issue, and I don't know if you guys got to talk about it yesterday. I had an issue here with my aunt, but I want to talk about it a little bit briefly with Kevin too. I just talking to a couple teams who don't think it's the best idea to be in Vegas, not just for the concept of obviously it could be another hotspot they're opening up now, and by the time we get there, we're talking 6 weeks from now or whatever it's going to be. But the concept of locking players up in hotel casinos where the only entertainment they have is gambling, which is something that a couple of teams have expressed concern about when I've talked to them. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, Kevin. Do you think that's
I had heard that seems to me a done deal.
Yeah, I know.
Vegas, and it's something the players wanted, but I didn't understand, and this is maybe I just haven't read the fine print, but they're not going to be allowed to participate in any of that, are they?
From what I understood, the hotels are going to be locked down to the one guy I talked to, and they don't really have the details yet either, to be honest. But the rumor out there is the whole hotel, restaurants, bars, the casino area is all going to just be open to the people in the hotel, the players in the hotel.
Right. So let's say it's the Orleans, like I said, right? We looked it up. There's a movie theater. There's tons of restaurants. There's bars. They may even have a bowling alley. It's not like there's nothing to do.
But how could they do that? I mean, it seems to me they're going to have to let some people in from the outside to their casinos, or they're not going to be able to survive. You can't just do it. I mean, let's not forget that we're having diminishing numbers as each week passes.
Sure.
By the time you get to the end there, you're down to 50 people.
I don't know. Right now, if I own a casino, I might take the gamble of putting a couple hundred millionaires in my casino, because that, and risk closing it down to the regular Joe Schmoes like you and me.
Yeah, but how many guys are actually going to do that? I mean, I don't see.
That's the problem. I mean,
I don't see if you got on a
I think a lot of them.
I think a lot of them will do it. I think that's why I picked the place off the main strip, because no one on the strip is going to do that because they have too much foot traffic on the strip. A hotel off the strip, I think, can afford to do this for a couple of months because they're not getting high room rates like the ones on the strip anyhow, and they don't get as many people in the casino like on the strip anyhow. So they probably could do it for a couple of months.
Yeah, but they're got to get more than 50. There's more
than 50 people there.
Well, there will be, but how many are going to participate in gambling?
I mean, don't you think
you'd be surprised?
Players are going to gamble if that's the only thing they have to do for a couple months?
Yeah, they're going to gamble.
I think there's far fewer gamblers than you think among players.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I do feel that way. I'm not saying there aren't some high rollers and guys that like to gamble.
Yeah,
but you're talking slots. You probably have, they'll play slots just out of boredom.
So, well,
I mean, I think boredom is a big issue, and gambling is like, and especially for these guys who are used to like life in the fast lane, who are getting out finally, they're going to be with their buddies, they're going to be with their friends, they're going to be hanging out with players from other teams because they're all friends, and you're going to see situations, I think, where
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you guys are right, but you have too, Russ. I've talked to players through the years, and I don't get the sense that there's, like more than half the players are gamblers. I don't get that impression.
Maybe because I live in Philadelphia and we're close enough to Atlantic City, but it's like, to me, that players that come in here, I can't tell you how many players I've talked to are like, "What are you doing on your day? We're driving to Atlantic City. We're going to Atlantic City." That's a very, very.
I think we're a bad area for that. I agree with that, Ek, because that's always been an issue here. Like the big joke
here. Teams, have taken extra days off to stay here because of that.
Right.
I know teams.
We're used to that here, Kev. So I think I'm a little jaded in that regard.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys could be right.
But I mean, when you put them actually in a casino, I mean, I'm not a huge gambler myself. Like, I gamble on blackjack like 1 or 2 times a year, maybe. I'm down, and I have a summer place. It's not too far from Atlantic City.
Hell, the casino in Buffalo is right across the street from the arena, and God knows there's tons to do in Buffalo, right? And I've been there a few times. I've never seen a player there. So
I worked in Atlantic City for 3 or 4 years, and I probably went to the casino 10 times, and it was either meeting a family member or meeting a friend. I didn't go
the same way, but at the same time, if I was quarantined and had a lot of money and was living
that's a different story.
Well, it was forced to be in a casino for like 2 or 3 weeks without anything else to do, and I make the kind of money that they made. I cannot imagine.
Well, all I can tell you is that, and this was a week ago or so, when John Tavares had a conference call with the Toronto media, and they were talking about the hub cities and what the requirements, that a number of players had indicated they want some place that they can actually live a life. I think that was the phrase he used, live a life and not be sequestered in the hotel 24/7.
Yeah, I heard Tavares voted down Brooklyn as a hub city as a result. Come on, that's a joke. It's a joke, guys.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's just one of my thoughts. But I think that the other thing I'll bring up is this. There was reports yesterday that there's some agreement that the NHL is working on behind the scenes with Canada. That Canadian teams will be able to train in Canada, without the 14-day issue or whatever, the quarantine issue.
Well,
and there will be a way that there will be able to be a hub city in Canada. Now, this is as of now, everything we've seen with the government would lean us towards that not being a possibility, right? But there does seem to be something that's being negotiated behind the scenes now.
Well, I know that Ryan Rashog from TSN reported yesterday that that there was something that would allow players to skate the 14-day quarantine, which is the big hurdle right now, because as soon as that report from Reuters early in the week came out, Kev, of them extending the 14-day quarantine for non-essentials to July 31st, I think Russ and I rightly said the Canadian cities are dead, but if they get special dispensation from the Trudeau government, then maybe there's a chance.
Yeah, I can tell you that the teams that I've talked to are all kind of assuming it's going to work out. Like, nobody knows anything, but they're assuming that that the NHL status in Canada would be such that they would be able to figure it out, and the fact that they're committed to this regimen of continuing.
Right.
You know what I find interesting, Ek? The NBA didn't even try and work it out with the Canadian government. They just have everything in the States. And MLB, we really don't know what they're going to do with the Blue Jays. But again, it's only one team compared to the 7. But still, you would have to think the other leagues may have tried and probably looked at it and said, yeah, that's not going to work for us because of the time frame. They could run out of runway because of the time frame. That's my point.
The time frame could be an issue. I mean, the other thing I heard about as far as Toronto being a possibility, and I just couldn't imagine Toronto being a possibility. It felt to me like, they obviously want a team in the East. They want a hub city in the East. They want a hub city in the West, right?
Right.
Columbus has been up there for sure. The thing that everybody likes about Toronto, which makes sense, is that there are lots of ice surfaces, right? There's just tons of ice surfaces in that area. And you are going to have practices, like we've talked about before. Like teams are in the playoffs; they're going to want to practice. And where are you going to practice? So in Toronto, of course, you got a zillion ice surfaces to practice. There's in the whole area, and there's other areas too where you can actually. I mean, there's even arenas, that you could film it. You could have games in Toronto besides. Well,
they've specified that they're only going to have games in NHL facilities. So they're not going to play games at the Coca-Cola Coliseum. But no, I mean, there's Mattamy, Ford Performance Center, Coca-Cola Coliseum as practice facilities, and then the Scotiabank Arena as the main hub.
You're talking about like 4 arenas where the Leafs practice.
And there's not going to be any conflict with the Raptors because the NBA is playing down in Orlando, so they'd have the building all to themselves.
So then, this is another thing that someone brought up? Could the hotels be organized in a way like could there be a quarantine of hotels where they're not all in a centralized hotel, but they're in hotels near or to practice facilities for various teams?
Well, that's what the NBA is doing, and I was telling Russ yesterday that the funny thing that's going on in the NBA right now is that the number 1 seeded teams are basically putting their foot down and saying we want the 5-star hotels at Disneyland, not those crappy 3-star hotels, and let the teams that are. I
want them to stay at the Nickelodeon Hotel where I stayed with my family.
Right? I mean, are you kidding me?
Where they all slept in SpongeBob SquarePants beds, and I think that's where I want these teams to be, staying in Orlando. That's where they should be. I want to see that. I want to see them in the SpongeBob beds, and have the place where they can go and get slimed.
I found one thing to be interesting because Morgan Riley had a conference call yesterday, and if it was Toronto as a hub city, the Leafs players would have to stay in a hotel, even though it's their host city. They would not be allowed to stay in their own homes, their own apartments or condos. They would have to be sequestered like every other team. So there wouldn't be any advantage. Now there'd be an advantage if they're playing in their own arena because they know where the soft places and the boards are and things of that nature. But in terms of everything else, it would be even. It would be on an even keel.
You know what? In the old days, teams did that anyhow in the playoffs and made their teams, the entire team, stay in a hotel. Emile Francis did that because New York was too much of a distraction. So he told all the guys, you don't get to go home.
But Kevin, my thought is this: in Vegas, where are these 12 teams going to practice?
The practice facility is out a ways too.
Yeah.
So.
The Orleans has the rink; it's in the hotel.
Yeah.
They've got one. You've got 12 teams.
Yeah, but they're not going to all practice at the same time.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
you need 12 slots.
You need 12.
Yeah, you need 12 slots.
So you're going to be practicing
at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
right. You need at least 3 or 4 places to practice with 12 slots. To me, that's because you got to. If you're practicing for an hour, you got to clean out the rooms for an hour. There's things you got to do.
Right.
But if they're in that hotel, they could go to the place dressed. They literally can.
Yeah, but they got to clean up. One of the issues I talked with the GM that wanted he just couldn't provide enough practice facilities.
Yeah.
He just said, we have just one rink, and he said, the problem is we have to clean these things after just like Ekman said, after everyone leaves. So, if you're going to practice for 90 minutes, or you want 90 minutes in the locker room, then you need an hour to clean. So you need 2.5.
Right.
We're going to have 12 teams there in the first.
So that's at least 4 places to me where you can maybe get 3 sessions in a day, and that's pushing it. Of course, not everybody's going to practice every day, I guess, but ideally, the ideal situation would be to have I think a rink that's exclusive to each team to practicing, which you can do in Toronto. You've got enough services in Toronto where you could have an exclusive area for each team, so that even though you're cleaning it, still you have the same people coming in and out of the same place, right? So that I think is that I don't know. To me, that's kind of an issue. I also talked to some people yesterday who were just very negative about the whole thing and think that this whole virus is coming back. And I talked to one person who's like, "Yeah, it's all great that we're doing this, but we got a 10% chance of doing this anyway." There's a lot of different kinds of people in the league that think that this is just an exercise in futility, which is frustrating. But have you heard any of that, Kevin? People saying that?
No, everyone's worried that it might happen, but I don't think anyone that I talked to thought it was a foregone conclusion. We just don't know. That's the problem. And as I said before, it would take sort of the multiple players on two teams playing each other, I think, to really knock it down.
Yeah.
I think even if you have one or two on teams, we will still proceed. But the problem is that's not how it works. If all these guys are going to be hanging out together, it won't be.
The guy I talked to, the issue is that we're just going to go into another lockdown like we did in February or whatever. But if things get really bad, then what happens? Do they do this and do they continue with this plan in a lockdown?
Well, our president said we are not going to do that. So
yeah, I know. I know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the governors have to say about that at the end of the day.
Hey, the governors are in control.
Yeah, I mean they're the ones, right? So I don't know. It's all.
Well, let me ask.
Let's move on to other news. Do we have anything else, Mike?
Yeah, I know. I had a couple things. Kev, yesterday, actually over the last week or so, Pierre LeBrun has been reporting that there has been some progress made regarding the CBA. Yesterday, specified that it could be a 4 or 5 year agreement, which by looking at that from the outside looking in, that would probably be the range that they would have to spread the loss of this season to, to make escrow viable for the players. I don't think the players are going to agree to 25% escrow the next 5 years. It's going to be flexible like it always is. But that's encouraging because I think that coming out of this, if they get labor peace for another 4 or 5 years, that's a good thing. What have you heard?
Yeah, no, I've heard that as well. And if you think about it, it just makes sense. Like they've been talking about all these issues and they're all part of a bigger issue, which is, how the escrow is going to work and the financial aspects of it. And, now we've had discussion about Olympics, and I've heard some encouraging talk about playing in the Olympics because, it makes sense for the NHL want to go to China. And in 26, it seems likely that the games are going to be in North America.
Yeah.
And then it would really make sense. So, that's something they can give the players, which I don't think would be all that painful for the NHL. So I think that might be the thing that gets the deal done. Plus, they've got to get this World Cup, organized. There's a lot of lost revenue there just because they haven't been able to get that together.
I was surprised a little bit about how willing the players would be to go to China, since obviously right now, China is still a little. I know it's the spread of the virus there has been less, but it began there and it's still not under control anywhere. I mean, would it be, contingent on there being a vaccine like that with everything? Because if it was someplace other than China, Kev, I would say that everybody would be all for it. But right now, there would be something I would think some players and some owners would be hesitant about.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But, I think everybody knows that there's, how many 130 people or 30 companies working on a vaccine. I think people think it's going to happen and it's far enough away. So, but, that makes sense. Like you can always say no. It's not that hard to throw together a team to go there. So, but yeah, I've heard very positive things about getting this done. And to be honest with you, I think both sides are fearful of a work stoppage. Like nobody wants to see that.
Right now, that would be just devastating.
Well, and particularly after going through this pandemic, I think that sort of also is sort of prompting them the idea to get this extension worked out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think the reality is, though, for indoor sporting events, at some point, let's say there is no vaccine, they're going to go to social distancing and they're going to sell tickets again. Like it's going to happen. If you already have a president who is going to fill or allegedly fill a 19,000 seat arena and have you sign a COVID release form so you can't sue them, clearly, and they were at a police rally yesterday where there were a lot of people, we're getting to the point, whether they care or not, that people are going to start going to indoor events again. It's up to them whether they show up.
Right. We saw that the NHL did a study regarding social distancing and having people in the buildings, and I think it was 2,500 to 3,000 people at most. It's not financially viable. It's really
that was at that time. I bet you there'll be another study, Mike.
Well, like I said, there was another study after that where they went to, if families are coming. That was like based on one person sitting with no one close to them for 6 feet. But if you got a family together, obviously you can have 2 people. There's all different kinds of numbers that.
So are they going to allow these families to bring in their own popcorn and hot dogs because they're not going to be selling concessions?
Yeah, I mean, the bathroom issue is an enormous issue for these indoor.
Yeah,
well, and the fact is, how do you police the family? I've talked to
right.
I'm saying, you say that you're going to allow a family in, and it's going to be a guy and 6 of his buddies he's going to say are cousins.
Right, exactly.
That's true. I mean,
at some point, I guess it does. They're going to have people sign off on it. They're going to have to say, well, I'm taking a risk.
Yeah, well, the president of the United States is going to have you sign off on it to go to his rally. I've mentioned the president of the United States twice already in this.
I know. And Dan, we want to talk about that so badly. But let's talk about the Blackhawks and the Oilers. Can we I want to get off this and talk about
more than Tucker Carlson will be mentioned.
I'd like to talk about my internet because I'm just so frustrated. But
I got a couple other things, Zach.
Who's your internet provider, Kevin? Lay it out.
The problem I have is I've now had this computer in 3 different internets, including one of them was a high speed. At the lake house, I've got the highest speed. And for the last 2 weeks, I'm beginning to think it's my computer, but I don't know enough about it to know whether that can possibly be.
It could be.
A couple other things, both involving players. One potentially playing in Europe, the other one playing in Europe, but may come back to North America. According to David Staples in the Edmonton Journal, Jesse Puljujärvi, who played in the SM Liga this year, was asked by a Finnish newspaper about returning to the Oilers, and he said, "Never say never." So
his agent told him to say that.
Yeah, do I think he's ever going to play for the Oilers again? No, but I think just the softening of this, maybe greasing the wheels for an eventual deal. Kev, what do you think?
Yeah, like he's got to come back over there, and he had a decent year. I talked to Russ about this earlier, and we were just talking about a potential trade, and I had asked Russ, who has his ear to it, and he can talk about this. But the problem is his reputation has been stained, around the league. Yeah. So no one's going to be willing to give up what the Oilers, want for him. That's the problem.
That's the problem. I mean, but no, he did have a good year, and I'm looking it up because I'm pretty sure Elias Anderson was on his team. And Elias Anderson's coming back, and we saw all the trouble there was.
I thought Anderson was in the SM League. Was in the SHL.
Oh yeah. You're right. It's somebody else though that was an NHLer that was on his team.
I'll check.
But it doesn't matter. He had a good year. He definitely can play hockey. There's no question about it. I don't think he hates Ken Holland, and I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it was the previous regime, but he probably wants to get traded at this point because he probably just wants a fresh start. So, yeah, Kevin's right. He's going to have to show up just to get traded.
Yeah. No, that's what I think, too. And maybe that's the deal thing. He said, come back, come to training camp, show everybody you can fly around a little bit. And, I like how you phrase that, though. He can play hockey. But, you and Eklund can play hockey. And you're not going to play
that.
He didn't mention me, so he knows I can't.
No, but people forget, Kev. It's like because everybody gets so critical about what a guy did or didn't live up to or whatever, and we forget that he was miserable, personally miserable, and that affects your game.
Yeah. I just had this discussion with someone about Casey Middlestat. Like how far, how do we view him now? Like this is a guy that they thought was going to step in and be the number 2 center behind Jack Eichel, and he's just been a major disappointment. But it's not like he's 31 years old.
No, they haven't given up on him, Kev, but they're definitely. I think Botterill and the Sabre organization realizes that it probably wasn't the best thing after 7 NHL games to decide that he was good enough to be the number 2 center to replace Ryan O'Reilly. They put too much pressure on him. I don't think he was fully developed. He would have benefited from another year in the NCAA or in the American Hockey League if it was possible. It took him time to adjust to the AHL when he went down. He didn't score for like the first 4 or 5 games and then started to play well. So I think they have hopes that he can bounce back and be the player that they imagined him. But I think after the way he played at the World Junior in Buffalo, they thought he was going to be a superstar. And now they're talking about, and this is the thing I'm always questioning about the Sabres, making the same mistake twice. I know Dylan Cousins is a different player, but they're talking about Dylan Cousins being the number 2 center next year behind Eichel, and you're just putting another 19-year-old into the sausage grinder, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I think the difference is Cousins has played a lot more games.
Right.
He has played more games. That's true. The thing about Middlestad is it turns out that the fact that he didn't play enough games and was still getting used to working out for NHL conditions were both two factors. And then I also think, like Mike said, there was an adjustment when he went to Rochester. He had a good year. 25 points in 30-something games is a good year. So he could play. He could still be a second-line center. He probably will be practicing with the team the minute they get back into camp, and then they'll make a decision. They might even give him a look again at in preseason, and I would, to kind of see where he's at. He is close. So, and at 21, I don't think there's a problem there. I don't.
The other thing that I saw on the wire here was there's talk about Brendan Leipzig getting a 2-year contract with CSKA Moscow. And I'm a little surprised at that. I mean, I thought he would probably have to go to someplace like the Deutsche League or SM Liga, but the KHL. I mean, he was a borderline NHL, AHL player, and we know everything that happened with him and his Instagram account. But I'm a little surprised he's getting a job in the KHL, but we don't know how much he's making and what.
Well, the KHL is a lot more forgiving about things that are taboo in this country. So, you have to look at it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But I think that my point would be I'm surprised from a talent perspective that he got a job in the
Well, he has a good shot.
That's where I am, too.
Leipzig.
Yeah, but he's not they usually want, high level. Like if you look at the guys that are over there, they're all high level offensive players.
But
he's like an example of the KHL team just kind of wanting like a name from an NHL
No,
team.
I don't think it's that. There's a salary cap there now.
Yeah.
Because there's a salary cap there now, they're not going to be able to have as many big names. So they are, I think, going to start looking for guys like Leipzig who are fast and who could shoot and who's not going to cost them a lot.
Right. Chris Weidman went over there a couple weeks ago, signed with a team, and I think it was like they said 14 million rubles, which translates to for like $350,000 or something like that. So yeah, these players are getting pennies on the dollar compared. If Leipzig's getting what Weidman got, that's half of his salary from the NHL, and he's probably getting it in a brown paper bag in the case.
That would throw me. If you're in Russia and you're going to McDonald's and you order like a number 8, it's going to be like 7,000 rubles. Like that would throw me.
But it's better than SpaghettiOs.
Good point.
No.
Good point. All right, let's talk a little bit about. I want to talk about this Edmonton-Chicago series because I've been doing some research on it, and it's just it's really one of the more fascinating ones. There's some really good stuff going on in this series. The teams met 3 times this year. Chicago winning 2 of the 3, and I watched these games. Like I went back and watched the condensed versions of these games at least, and the feel I got was that Chicago just looked better than Edmonton in all of the games. I mean, Edmonton won one of the games, but it was really, it was kind of crazy. Like the first time they met was very early in the season. The Edmonton Oilers were off to they were 5-0. The Oilers were, and the Blackhawks were 0-2-1 in the first meeting, and the Blackhawks stopped the Oilers, winning streak at the beginning of the season, winning that game. And that was purely Crawford. Crawford was incredible in that game. That's the one game where I felt like the Oilers played their best, but the Blackhawks just, the Crawford just was the real deal the whole way. It was a 3-1 game, and that was all Crawford. After that, though, it was interesting. So the next time they met, which was was it not until March, not until February? Sorry, so they met on October 14th, and they didn't meet till February 11th. So they went 4 months there. The Oilers won 5-3, but in that game, the Blackhawks had a 3-0 lead, and they chased that. That was crazy too. There was a big, the Oilers came back hard in that one, and then in the final one where they met on March 5th, which is really right towards the end of when we were playing hockey at all, the Blackhawks won 4-3, and in that game, you saw the Blackhawks were out shooting the Oilers in both the second and third game badly, and yet their Blackhawks goaltending, both Leonard in the one game that they lost, and then Crawford in the last game, goaltending like save percentages were in the 860s. Like they were like the Oilers were scoring on not many chances at all. The Blackhawks, though, they can skate with the Oilers. When you watch these teams play with each other, they can skate with them for sure. And it's an all and the Blackhawks in 3 games scored 3 goals, 3 goals, and 4 goals against the Oilers. So that's a lot of goals.
Well, Kev, let me ask you this to start, because in my mind, maybe Edmonton shouldn't be intimidated by playing the Hawks, the Hawks of 2020. But if I'm Edmonton and I'm a team that's been in the playoffs once in the last decade, and you've got 2 of the best players in McDavid and Draisaitl, but you've got questions on defense, you've got questions in net, I don't think you really want to play 3-time Cup winner Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, Corey Crawford, who took over the number 1 duties after Leonard was traded and went 5-2 in his last 7 games. He was the Corey Crawford of old. That's not an easy first round or easy play-in round.
Well, no, and I think it's a recipe for disaster for the Oilers for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
First of all, everybody is saying, what's the Blackhawks even, doing in the, in this mix.
Yeah.
So, because of that, the Blackhawks are going to be all fired up and playing at their best. And, we all know how even teams are. And the Oilers probably feel like, we've played well enough to earn, one of those seeds, but they didn't get there based on, where they're at. And just what you mentioned, the fact that, they actually, that they being the Blackhawks has some history, like their top guys are battle tested, and the Oilers, I mean, Connor McDavid has only been in the playoffs once,
he's,
we haven't seen him do that. So, and it's sort of a different world. And, for all of those reasons, like I my first round upset, I'm taking the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
I don't, and I feel like that the league needs the Oilers to win.
Right.
And I feel like I want them to win.
Well,
right.
Well, I mean, Chicago would be playing with house money, which in Vegas would be something that would be beneficial. But the Blackhawks updated yesterday their injury situation, because they've had a number of players when the pause went in that were injured. Adam Boquist is 100% healthy. Kajula, who was out, I think, since like November or December, Russ, he's 100% healthy. Calvin DeHaan will participate in camp, but no Seabrook, no Andrew Shaw, no Zach Smith. So they're getting some of their guys back.
Their defense is still suspect. Like, I think Edmonton will win this series because I don't think Chicago can lock down a lead.
And remember, they traded Gustafsson to Calgary, and they traded Leonard, who was the better of the 2 goalies, but Crawford did play.
I mean, I'm not
played well against Edmonton, in one of the games.
I'm not diminishing Crawford, but
he's got experience in the playoffs. Crawford's a playoff goalie. He's
the Chicago defense. Once you're past the top 3 in the Chicago defense, they are going to have trouble. They're going to have to load up all the minutes on those top 4 guys, and they're going to have a hard time locking down leads. And that's why I think that one game that you saw, when they're up 2-0, whatever, I don't think Edmonton's going to be worried, because with Chicago, you can come back. Corey Crawford is going to have a shutout every game. That their defense is going to have gaffes. I mean, it's just
the problem with that, Russ. You're right about that, but the problem with coming back against teams like the Hawks is when you come back against teams that have super skilled players up front, even if they don't have a lot of them. Like if you trying to come back against players with Kane and Taves up front, that you have to leave yourself wide open to a lot, to come back, because your defense has to pinch, everything has to happen, and you can get burned. And this is like that's how the Penguins have made their living, right? So
but it's not
tight games. If for some reason these games are tight or within 2 goals, the Blackhawks are going to have a hard time.
But the Hawks are not a one-trick pony. It's not just Kane and Taves. They do have DeBrincat and Strome and Saad. I mean, they do have
30 goals. They could
score.
Have
7 players who scored at least 10 goals. The Blackhawks.
They could score goals. They can't prevent them. That's their problem.
The Oilers.
But the Oilers can't prevent them either.
No,
they have trouble. They do.
But I think the Oilers, so this much, because it's like a really interesting battle, because the Oilers have 8 players who've scored at least 10 goals, right? And the Blackhawks have 7. That's a lot for any team. Both those teams are really high in that number.
I still think the Oilers have 8 better, though.
8. So the and then 6 players with at least 30 points on the Blackhawks, which is again not terrible. 1 fewer than Edmonton's 7.
Yeah, but just as an example, Nurse and Clefbaum are better than any defenseman on the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, well, that's true. And then the Blackhawks defense, but then again, you got some defense in there that is tested in the playoffs. I mean, you have experience. Will experience matter enough?
But Keith is not even close to the same player.
No. The Chicago's defense, it's sad to say that Edmonton's defense is better than Chicago's because Edmonton's defense is not that great, but they are. But I think there's equal question in terms of goaltending because Crawford is tested, and if he's healthy, he will play well. Whereas Koskinen has not played in an NHL playoffs, and we've seen his inconsistency throughout his NHL career. I know, Aki, you love him, but he's just not. He's at his best, he's a very good goaltender. At his worst, he's incompetent. But it's a question of what you get out of him. And if he plays down the middle, then they may have a chance to win. But when he's bad, he's really bad.
What did
Kevin say?
I just said, is that on the back of his hockey card, Mike? Incompetent. So
I do not love Koskinen. I do not love Koskinen. I just think he's way better than you guys give credit for.
He's more of your favorite than Frederick Anderson.
I'm actually with Eck on this. I mean, I don't love him, but I don't hate him either.
Well, everyone puts it against the guy when they get a big contract. But at the end of the day,
you feel about the
what? Let me channel my inner Joel Quenneville. Okay. I don't mind him. That's what.
Let me channel my inner Randy Carlisle. He's just okay.
Here's the other way. I heard somebody say the other day. It's not bad, but he's not great either.
But another factor. Dave Tippett is a way better coach.
Yes.
Way better.
More experience. I mean, I don't know how.
Right now, he's a better coach.
Yeah, I agree with that, Russ. He's got a coaching edge for sure.
And that's another edge for Edmonton, another slight edge.
And I would not be shocked at all if you see more of Mike Smith than you expect to see in this series.
That wouldn't shock me. Nothing shocks me with Edmonton.
If that's the case, they're in bigger trouble.
Well, here's the thing with Mike Smith played 2 of the 3 games against Edmonton, and here's my thinking of maybe why that happened was
Chicago.
I mean, you don't have the defense like you said, but Smith's ability to handle the puck helps your defense a little bit. And I think the Tippett sees that as okay. That can help my defense. It makes it so if Chicago's goal is just to dump the puck in and make the Edmonton Oilers defense turn their backs,
well,
give the puck away, then you have. I mean, having Smith helps that a little bit. Like
had Edmonton not made the moves they made before the deadline. I mean, they added a Thinasiu, they added Tyler Ennis, they added Mike Green. I don't know if Mike Green is back healthy. I haven't seen any reports, but I know he was out like 2 games after he joined the Oilers. I mean, those will make a big difference because really the problem with the Oilers throughout the season was a lack of depth on the wings to be able to help Draisaitl and help McDavid. They didn't have weapons to feed, and they had to do most of the work themselves. And if they have guys who can put the puck in the net, then it makes their task a little easier.
Well, here's another factor.
The other thing I'll give Edmonton was that little stretch they played there without McDavid before this whole thing happened, where they played very good defensive hockey, and it showed that Tippett taught. Yeah, they had to, but they could, and that Tippett could get them to buy into that, and they still managed to. They were above 500 during that stretch,
right?
They were, and that wasn't surprising. I could follow that up though. Edmonton had the second best penalty kill. Chicago's is 8th. That's another big factor.
Yeah, and we can analyze this series to death, which we will and we like to do. Yeah. But if Connor McDavid wants to take it over and seize control, Oilers are going to win big. I mean, he can win a series by himself, and he's never had that opportunity. Maybe he's going to take this opportunity and say, "Come on, boys, just get on my back, and we'll win games 5-4 if we have to." But
I think him versus Kane is a good matchup that way. I think Kane can still do that in some games too. He can. We've seen him do that this year. This year, he had a pretty good resurgence, so I think Kane's capable too. But
Kane loves playing against other skilled players like this. Like this is one of Kane's favorite. Kane will be the first to admit that. I love when players admit that they want to play against other players who are really good. Like that's one of Kane's things.
So I don't know if you're going to force us to make predictions here, Ak, but
I'm not going to force anybody to do anything. I'm not the president of the United States, but I am going to tell. I'm going to.
wow.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's so far off, Mike. I mean,
No.
I had to get Kevin up.
We should sell this show to MSNBC. My God.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so
I will volunteer my prediction, and
go ahead, Mike.
I
Not making you wear a mask or anything. You can just make your prediction. You got it. Go ahead.
I will pick the Blackhawks in 5.
Woohoo! Nice. Kevin, you're going to stay with your upset central here?
Yeah, I am. I'm going with the Hawks, and it's all just based on the idea that I think whatever will infuriate the most number of fans will. And I just think the Oilers, who have a legitimate beef, are going to be so unhappy if they lose to the Blackhawks, and so I just think because of that, we're going to see that. But I'm going to be just full disclosure. I am totally rooting for the Oilers in this. I want to see, and I really like dealing with Jonathan Taves and the Blackhawks in general. But I just think we need to see Connor McDavid on an extended run.
Yes,
he is such an incredible player. And it's talked about all the time, but sometimes we forget what it means. But not only is he fast, but he makes plays at such a high speed. And I just think we need to see him, go deep into the playoffs.
Ross?
I'm with you 100%.
I'm going to go Oilers in 4 because if Corey Crawford has any kind of injury, who's the backup?
Malcolm Subban.
Yeah,
not exactly tested, gives up a lot of goals. That's another factor. So I think the Oilers are in pretty good shape here. Could they be beaten? Sure, but I think they're in pretty good shape.
I think Oilers in 5, but I think it's going to be a bang out series. I think it's going to be the most fun series to watch in the playoffs. In the beginning, at least.
No.
What was that?
I don't think it'll be the most fun series.
I think the most fun in this early round. I think in the early playing rounds, whatever. I think.
So 3 of us have it going to the distance of 5 games, right?
Yeah. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I mean, an interesting thing I saw today on McDavid versus Crosby, like you say, Kevin, which is they both played 5 years now, and you look at their first 5 seasons. It's they're fascinating how close they are statistically. It's just nuts. I
would love to see a Penguins Oilers.
Would that be something? I know.
Yeah.
The only difference is, sorry, if you look at McDavid's face-off percentage, it's still under 50%. Crosby was killing in all those other categories that McDavid is not good at yet.
Well, McDavid won 2 Art Rosses in his first 5. Crosby won 1. McDavid won 2 Ted Lindsays. Crosby won 1. They each won the Hart Trophy. Crosby won the Maurice Richard Trophy, but Crosby also won a Stanley Cup. So that's
Crosby's a better player still after the first 5 years. He is.
And I know this argument was used when during the Gretzky era, but I think Crosby is a more well-rounded two-way player. Whereas McDavid, his defense is his offense, like Gretzky.
Crosby has played with way better players. Can we all admit that? Crosby has played with a way better team than
but he's a way better player. I mean, I'm a huge Connor McDavid fan, but he worked every year. It became a running joke. I'd go in the fall and I'd say, "What are you working on?" Because he would try to craft and work on aspects of his game. He's been a really strong defensive. He never gets enough credit for it. Yeah, but a strong defensive player for a very long time.
Oh yeah. No, he's a better all around.
People said, he wasn't getting enough goals. So he started scoring a bunch of goals,
Yeah.
But you know what? Call me when McDavid gets 120 points. Give me a call that day.
Yeah, I mean, so far the points per game, McDavid has played 351 regular season games in his first 5 years. Crosby played 371 in his first 5 years. Points per game, McDavid 1.34, Crosby 1.36. It's they're literally the same points per game in their first 5 years.
Well, he's going to have a chance to catch up because of Crosby's concussions. So next 5 years, he has a chance to really catch up because of that.
Now, some interesting news about New Jersey. I think it was Darren Drager yesterday reported that one of the leading candidates for the head coaching position could be Peter Laviolette. And it's okay, so that's that would be team number 3 in the Metro for Philly Islanders, and Carolina. That there'd be 4 teams in the Metro.
That's right.
The one thing about Lavi, he did a show, and I forget the guy's name. It's like Charlie something, because I interviewed Charlie. He does a fishing show, and Laviolette is a fisherman and loves to hang out in South Jersey and fish. Like, that's his thing. So even if he goes to the Devils, you'll still find him in South Jersey fishing. That's my prediction. But
Jersey, I mean, I grew up in South Jersey. It's not exactly a fisherman haven.
oh,
I mean,
there's places that there are.
Okay.
Cherry Hill is not a place to fish.
That's true. Unless you want to go fish at like the mall.
Ask Mike Trout. He stays out there. His last name's Trout for a reason. But the other thing,
there's a question though that's really interesting, because it seems to be like the debate between Laviolette and Gallant for this position, right? Like, okay, so we're sitting there. You've got Gallant and Laviolette for the Devils, and who is better with developing young players? Basically, is the question, right? That's what we have.
Well, that's just one other thing I'd consider if I was an owner. Who can help me sell tickets? Because it's not Peter.
Right.
Yeah, Peter Laviolette. Gallant is very good with the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy.
True.
Quotable. Peter is very difficult.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to provide much information, and you still got to sell tickets.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point.
So if all's equal, I would take Gerard Gallant. I would say Gerard's more old school, and Peter is a little bit more modern. And he's one of the few coaches that you can identify who doesn't think offense is a dirty word.
Right.
He pushes the tempo of the puck, much to the frustration sometimes of his general managers.
But Kev, what about
Laviolette burns teams out pretty quickly.
Early on,
he pushes as hard as anybody does. As far as
he does. But what about the other thing about New Jersey, and I think this is more alarming. I would go with Gallant too. The more alarming thing is that story where if he's talking about bringing in Eddie Olczyk and having like a CEO, like, again, Kev, we all love Eddie Olczyk, but he doesn't have any experience doing any of this. And Fitzgerald is new as a GM, even though he's been in the front office a little bit. There's no real guru there. Like, everybody has a Bowman or Lou Lamoriello or somebody, even if you're the face and you're out in front of it. The Devils won't have anybody like that.
Yeah, although, John Davidson has had success, and
but he worked for a few years. Eddie Olczyk's never even been in the front office.
Well, no, but when he first got his job, John hadn't done that.
That's true.
He just now he didn't start finding success until he got to Columbus.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who like Eddie Olczyk for the idea that he would be a great head of an organization.
Right.
So he's eventually going to get a job. I don't know if it's going to be in New Jersey, but eventually he's going to end up running the team.
I think he should. Yeah, I think he will too. I mean, I think it's hard to say. I mean, Gallant is old school, you're right, but Gallant also had a whole lot of luck being about as new school as you can be in Vegas. I mean, so that's the
Does anyone really understand how Gallant lost his job?
That is still just absolutely
to this day, I don't get it.
It's completely baffling. It feels like something that's happened that we just
nobody talks about him behind his back. Nobody says, this guy's not the coach you think he is. Nothing. We don't hear anything.
Something happened.
What's really interesting about him, and I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. He was talking about his power play one time, and everyone was talking about the fact that it hadn't clicked in a while. And he basically said, I watch it every day in practice, and it feels like it's right to me. And he said, I just feel like we're going to start scoring. And he said, I know they're not, I can look and I can see the statistics. We're not scoring.
Yeah.
It looks right. It feels right. I think we're doing the right things. And, I'm going to let it play out for a while. And it did. And just like he said, eventually that's exactly what happened. It started turning around a little bit. And I think, I kind of like guys like that that don't overreact.
That's refreshing, isn't it? I mean, holy cow, we never see that ever. You never ever see that. That's like I've never heard a guy say that to me. That's really cool. I mean, just like, what's wrong with defense? I think we're fine. Or what's wrong with power play? I think we're fine. It's just not working right now. Sometimes things just don't work.
But it's just unusual how such an effective coach has gotten the short end of the stick numerous times. I mean, I think he was in Columbus for 1 year, but that was when Columbus wasn't very good. But the Florida thing with and getting fired unceremoniously, and the whole thing with the Uber or the cab or the Uber or whatever the hell it was, and now this where he gets to the Stanley Cup final and
with an expansion team.
Nobody's and then loses his job to the guy who he lost in the first round to, in Peter DeBoer last year. And they apparently were not they didn't get along famously during that series. So it's like that had to sting even more. So I mean, it's
strange.
Very bizarre.
Really strange. We got to get going pretty soon here, guys.
Okay, last thing I wanted to just mention, because it happened last week, but The Athletic, which, you know, as somebody who follows the league, I subscribe and I read them, and they have some good reporters. Well, they let go 46 people, not some NHL reporters like Joe Yerdon, who we've had on the show, George Richards, Ken Wiebe in Winnipeg, and there are a lot of WNBA people, a lot of college football people, but we've been skeptical, Kev, about the business model of The Athletic and how it was sustainable. And I know everything right now with the pandemic is being focused, you know, in terms of, you know, websites and other things and other businesses being able to stay in business. But I was a little surprised. I was still taken aback by this. It caught me a little bit by surprise.
Well, I think everybody in journalism is rooting for them because we need some real positive news in the journalism front. And if this model could work, it could really help. I mean, I think you would see everyone start putting up paywalls and that sort of thing. The one thing I would point out when you look at this, just because I understand the analytics of readership, because we certainly, when I was at USA Today, kept track of all that, the hockey writers who lost their jobs are in markets where it's hard to produce numbers. And by that, readership, you know, Florida, you know, it was one of the, Arizona was another one as well. Mm-hmm. You know, Nashville, John Glennon, who did both the Titans and the Predators as well. You know, there were, I think they went to the smaller markets, which tells me, you know, they're trying to get their readership. You know, it's all about readership for them as well.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You got to get your numbers up. So, and, you know, plus the layoffs with 43 of those, you know, it was pay cuts as well. So
yes,
I don't know. I mean, I think we shouldn't give up on the model because I think the pandemic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, who knows? You know,
I mean, speaking for a website owner myself, this is incredibly hard right now. Like we are just, you know, we're getting killed. And, you know, and it's just, we'll get through this, of course, and everything's fine, but it's really tough to stay in business right now, because not just because there's no sport to cover, but also because there's no businesses advertising on the internet right now. Like, so it's a tough time. I mean, and I think that it's kind of rarefied air. We haven't really, it's hard to judge The Athletic on this.
Yeah.
But,
and I just had this discussion with another writer who was telling me how much trouble they've had generating readership. And, you know, I tell the story when the last time we had a lockout, you know, that's about the time when USA Today was really starting to analyze numbers, like, you know, who was reading what. And we couldn't get anyone to read about the lockout.
Yeah.
Now, again, I was at USA Today, so our need for numbers was greater than some of the other papers. But, you know, we just couldn't get people to read it. They don't want to read about that. They want to read about competition and you know, like the all this stuff that we're doing now in preparation. Once we get closer, now the numbers will just go crazy. But
they're going to be great. And then from there, we're going to jump right into like free agency and all kinds of crazy fun things. But for now, this is a survival of the fittest couple months here.
Oh yeah.
And no question about that. And, you know, we appreciate you guys watching us. And obviously if you're watching this show right now, you know that. So we really appreciate everything that you guys do for watching and supporting the show and everything like that. And, you know, all the writers who are working really hard right now on our site, we just appreciate that too. I mean, great content, you know, is hard to come up with right now. So we definitely appreciate how hard everybody's working. And that includes everybody here on the podcast, for you guys doing it too. I just appreciate, I can't, you know, really thankful and can't be thankful enough for everybody stepping up. And we hope you guys all out there have a nice weekend. Be safe. Okay. And remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all on Monday.